podcasting will be a thrill. Grandpa and chill, grandson and friends. Grandpa and chill in full effect. We talk about it all, yeah, put it all on the set with that pet craze too. We chillin' with Rosie, come through, stay tuned, yeah, listen closely. Cause this the millennials and the silent generation coming together, discussion in rotation. This is Grandpa and Chill.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back, gang. This is the Grandpa and Chill podcast. Whatever you've been seeing the last 7 weeks, those are backloaded episodes. We're back new and live with our beautiful guest. Today, we're with David Page, producer, creator of the amazing show that I'm not going to mess up the name of. It is Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. You love it, you know it, and you know that you've stolen a recipe from it. Our host today, Brandon Fox, is here. Our co-host, Phines Jackson, is here. Our muse and mascots, the Barton Frank and Rosie the Bird, are here. Hello, David. How are you?
I've never been introduced as beautiful.
Yes.
Keep going.
Yes.
Wow. I have to get my wife to tune
in. Yes, please.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm super excited. So for our audience who wants to pretend that they don't know what you do, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been a journalist for a touch over 50 years now. And in this business, you are whatever you were last. Pardon me. I've been in the business for 50 years, but I'm now going to clear my throat in front of a microphone. Thank you. So I've been mostly in television. I've been an investigative journalist and international journalist, did stints with NBC and ABC. After I left network news, I ended up as a food journalist, creating Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, producing the first 11 seasons of that. Moving on to syndicate a show called Beer Geeks, all about craft beer. Helps if you can remember the name of your own show. And most recently wrote my first book, Food Americana, about what is involved in American cuisine, which is far more than hamburgers, and yet ill-defined in the minds of many people.
We were talking about this a little before we started rolling, but I asked you, are you a chef? And you said I was very excited for you to dive in to the answer there.
Well, I'm not a chef. I'm an eager amateur. See, chefs have a something. Yeah. I've interviewed so many chefs who, in the middle of conversing with me, turn around to do something to the food without looking at it, touching it, taking it. They just know. I don't have that ability. If I'm having 4 people over for some sort of important steak dinner, I'll buy 5 steaks so I can keep cutting one open to make sure it's good. But so I don't have the it to be a chef, but I love cooking, which I didn't start doing until after I had spent a number of years in Europe, where I developed an increasing fascination with food and the role it plays in various cultures, and understood, or came to understand, that food is in fact the gateway to a culture. And I had never expected to be sent to Europe by NBC. I was an American as intellectually xenophobic as the next. I hadn't studied Europe. And all of a sudden, I'm going from country to country I know nothing about. And I found that the food was a great way to kind of begin to understand what was going on there. But in the course of all of this news coverage, I was home literally days a year. And at one point, when I was moving out of an apartment in Frankfurt to move to Budapest to start covering the soon-to-begin communist revolutions, I looked around my kitchen, which I had paid to install, because in Germany, the kitchen doesn't come with the apartment. You either buy it from the previous tenant or you put one in. I was the first tenant to rent this new apartment, so I had spent quite a lot of money putting a kitchen in, and as I was leaving, I realized I had never even turned the stove on. when I got back to the States a couple of years later, I thought to myself, I wonder if there's anything to this cooking thing. And I started to try it, and I liked it. And it turns out that as an amateur, I'm pretty good at it. But I'm also dangerous. In other words, if I invite you to my house for dinner, it may be something I've never made before. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. The other day, I made shrimp and grits. These days, our daughter lives in New York. It's just us. And my wife and I love shrimp and grits. And I had been sent some heritage grits by some friends in North Carolina. And I make a phenomenal shrimp and grits. Except this night I didn't. It was horrible. You could crunch your way through the grits. There was no flavor. My wife wouldn't eat it. And so, it's always a crapshoot.
It's funny you say that because we had a cooking episode on our show, and it's like a long-standing joke of I think some people here are very good cooks, and then I myself not really, but I love food, right? So it's a very fun balance. You know what I mean?
Well, are you single or married?
Neither.
Okay, whatever the hell that means.
Yeah.
If you're dating in any way,
Yes.
you have to have one go-to dish.
Yeah.
That's all you need. And usually it's a chicken something, and lemon chicken. You can't screw it up that bad. Or even better, chicken parm, because all the mistakes are hidden under cheese. You need one dish that you can serve at home to prove you're a continental guy.
The first and only time I cooked for a partner was in college, and I made mac and cheese because it was going to be the easiest thing. Beautiful, like I put it in the oven. I had done everything, and then when I took it out, she took the first bite, and the inside was green. And it was because there was a spatula that had dripped wax throughout the mac and cheese, unbeknownst to me. The whole, see, my answer to green macaroni would have been it's organic. Yeah.
Although it's funny because, you start off with pasta. I remember in college in Oklahoma, my roommate and I invited two young ladies over to the house for dinner. And of course, we made spaghetti. It wasn't even pasta back then. It was spaghetti. But we didn't have bowls to serve them in. So with great panache, we took coffee cups and we filled them with spaghetti. And then because we could, we slammed them on the side of the counter to remove the handles. So it was a sort of tableside preparation.
Wow.
Did they eat it?
Yeah, they ate it.
Wow.
I assume it was our charming personalities that dominated the evening.
It was something because it wasn't that cup of noodles.
And now
it
you
was
have a career in
great.
food.
Grandpa's nodding his head. He's been there. He's done something like this.
Yeah, Grandpa. How's your cooking?
David, do you have any particular dish that you're most fond of, or particular restaurant or particular area that you enjoy having a meal at?
My death row meal is bagel lox and cream cheese, if it's a real bagel and good lox. I'm very fond of any braising process that takes an otherwise bad piece of meat like brisket and turns it into something special, because usually the recipes that surround that sort of cooking have been really well thought out. It goes back to the poverty thing where people who had the least got the worst pieces of meat and had to decide what to do with them. I mean, brisket's a fascinating example. I'm New York Jewish, so my cultural edible tradition involves brisket prepared the way Eastern or Central European Jews would, which is a long, slow cook in some sort of liquid. It's come to include tomatoes. I don't know when that happened. But you compare that to Texas brisket, which is also a long, slow cook of a very hard to work with piece of meat. It's done entirely differently. I mean, the great Central Texas barbecue joints simply pack it in salt and pepper. And I'm thinking of Louis Miller's in Taylor, Texas specifically, where one of the chefs who most impressed me in my life was Bobby Miller, Louis' son, grown son, who, when I visited, was literally reaching behind him to move briskets to different parts of this 60-year-old smoker because he knew what the temperature was in each part of his smoker and when the meat needed to go. So I'm very fond of that sort of food. If you were to say, what food would you like to live on every day of the week with its internal diversity, it would be Mediterranean and specifically Spanish. I'm in love with Spain. I'm in love with the cuisines of Spain. And you always find something new. On our last trip there a couple of years ago, my wife and I were in the central market in, I think, Valencia, and we came across barnacles, which I only knew of as a nuisance to boats. It turns out they're no different than any other shellfish. The meat, what little of it there is once you get into it through the shell, is sort of lobster-like or crab-like in its flavor. But they sell barnacles, and you smash them open and kind of suck out the meat, and they're great. They're fantastic. Another example of the through line of so many cuisines, which is food of poverty.
Yeah.
I'm curious, David. When you were going through Europe, through your journalism, was that food related or no? It was.
No,
just,
I was over. I covered Europe, Africa, and the Middle East from home base originally in London, then Frankfurt, then Budapest, for NBC News as a producer. I walked through the Berlin Wall the night it opened. I interviewed Gaddafi, Arafat. I got to cover the biggest events in the world at a time when I can honestly say it was still part of the golden age of TV news. Our standards were very high. Our budgets were very large. It was a good time. I was lucky.
And how did that transition into a career more centered around food, for example, producing?
Absolute luck. First of all, I did develop a particular, I guess you could call it a hobby. My fascination with food expanded greatly while I was traveling the world. I didn't get to Asia. Well, I guess I got on the other side of the Bosporus in Turkey, so technically. But no, I didn't cover Asia. But I got to go to a lot of places and developed an increasing appreciation for the variety of food and for the regionalism of food and for the concept of eating what is locally grown. And not because I wear Birkenstocks, but because it tastes better if you eat what's local. I mean, I live on Long Beach Island in New Jersey, which is a tourist sandbar, basically, the first sandbar north of Atlantic City. We have a commercial fishing port at the tip of the island that provides, in my view, the finest scallops on the face of the earth. In August, we have fresh tuna, because that's the weather conditions bring the tuna there. We have monkfish, we have tilefish. We have phenomenal seafood, and yet I'll take a look at a local restaurant and watch tourists eating fried shrimp. We don't have shrimp here. You want shrimp? Go to Savannah. Go to New Orleans. Why would you come to a place like this that produces great local seafood and not eat the great local seafood? I mean, my wife and I were just down in Charleston, and there is not an oyster left in Charleston because we went to Charleston and ate all the oysters. But that and gula geechee dishes, that's what you eat in Charleston. And it's interesting because Charleston has become such a food hub at this point that there are many opportunities to go to Charleston and eat food that has nothing to do with Charleston. And in my view, that's horseshit. I mean, enjoy yourself. But why would you go to such a noted capital of a particular American food culture and not eat that food? I think I got way off track. You asked me how I ended up in food journalism. Okay, came back to the States, became a show producer at NBC. I had been with NBC overseas, co-created the weekend editions of the Today Show. Left NBC, went to ABC, where I was the senior investigative producer of 2020. I ran the investigative unit. And then the only time in my career I've ever been wanted, I was poached within the building to become a senior producer of Good Morning America. There were 3 so-called line producers every third week, subject to the sign-off of the executive producer. The show was yours. And I did some food TV in that respect. Emerald was on the show. But when I left and, I followed a bizarre job out to Minnesota. I thought it would be cool to be an executive at a publicly traded corporation. So I took the job as senior vice president and executive producer at a home shopping channel, realized 10 seconds in, this was not me. Got that out of my system, opened my own production company, and immediately began to starve. Because a production company is basically your name on an answering machine. Do those still exist? Until someone buys something from you. And I wasn't selling. So I called an old friend, Al Roker, who had worked on the weekend show when I ran it. He had since moved on to the weekday show. But he also had a production company that was doing well. I said, Al, I'm starving. I mean, I could lose a few pounds. It wouldn't hurt. And this was before his surgery, so could he. Anyway, I said, you got any work? And he said, sure. I'm doing a lot of stuff for the Food Network. Why don't I just subcontract some of that through to you? Which he did. And that was great. And suddenly I was a food journalist. We got to the point where we both acknowledged that I wasn't going to get rich working for someone else for the Food Network. So I went out on my own and tried again and pitched them, and they weren't buying anything I was selling. The good news was I at least had a contact inside the network now who would take my phone calls, which is a huge burden in the first place. But every time I called her, it was no. Finally, one day I'm on the phone with her. And I had done, at their request, a history of diners through Roker Productions. And I'm on the phone with her, and she's saying, no. Finally, I guess she took pity on the shriveled hulk of a former confident human being that I had become. And somehow she knew I was in the fetal position under my desk, and she said, have you got anything about diners? And I said immediately, oh, yeah. I'm developing this great show called Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and I told her all about it. And she said, for the first time in a pitch call, she said, that sounds good. We have a pitch meeting, a development meeting Tuesday. Get me a write-up on Monday for a 1-hour special. I said, terrific. And this was late on a Thursday or a Friday. It was dark. I was in my basement office at home. I got off the phone, conflicted. On the one hand, here was an opportunity. On the other hand, what I had told her was complete bullshit. I was not developing a show called Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. I had just pulled the name out of thin air, or a body part, if you want to get scatological. I had completely made up the description of the show, and now I had 2 or 3 days to come up with enough material to back up the pitch. So I spent the weekend calling around. Back then, people actually called people on phones. They didn't just text. And I called people all over the country and wrote up a pitch document and got it to her on Monday, and they looked at it Tuesday. And shortly thereafter, they commissioned a 1-hour special. Now, truth be told, they didn't see this as a series. Guy Fieri had won their Food Network Star Contest. It was the second one they had. And this was back when they still thought that they could use that contest to create Food Network stars. In fact, I think he's the only one really to have come out of the contest. But back then they thought, this was a feeder. And they were eager to get him a primetime show. So they had 2 big-name production companies out putting together pitches for the primetime show. And they figured in the meantime, this little special would keep him on the air and keep him in front of a few viewers. Well, 2 things happened. Number one, the special did really well. And number 2, the pitches they got from the big deal production companies, the guys who wore the suits and ties, they didn't like them. So now they had a guy they wanted to put on primetime television, and they had nothing to put him in except diners. So they ordered a short first season, which to their surprise, the first couple of episodes rated particularly well, at which point they tamped down my enthusiasm, or tried to, by telling me that, this is great, but at best this show has 2 seasons and it may be 3, because there just aren't that many restaurants you could feature around the country. Now, I did 11 seasons and then I dropped out. They're now up to season 30 something. So this is a perfect example of William Goldman's first rule of Hollywood. Goldman was a double Oscar-winning screenwriter who wrote wonderful books about Hollywood. And when it comes down to, why does a studio pick up this picture, not that one? Why does this picture succeed, not that one? Goldman's rule is no one knows anything. And he was right.
In my research, I saw it's 42 seasons, actually, so you're doing even better.
Is it? Well,
but...
no, I don't get residuals. Yeah. I'm not doing any better. It's cable.
Yeah, it's amazing. The pitch process, I think there might be a lot of listeners that might even be unfamiliar with the term.
Mm-hmm.
Could you go into what that means?
You tell whoever you're pitching what the show is that you want to do and exactly how you would do it, and you include proposed episodes so that they can see it and feel it. Now, usually that then also includes producing some visual example of what you're talking about, although the business today is a little different. More and more shows are being picked up off YouTube and TikTok. So these days, the landscape has changed. You can make any show you want for $1.380, and then if the right network or right agency sees it, then it's a whole different way to get picked up. Back in my day, when I walked barefoot uphill to school in a snowstorm both ways, dodging polar bears, it was a whole different thing. You basically... you did your best in writing to convey the soul and the feel of the show. And there's a real skill to that, because I've seen an awful lot of pitches that say, this is a show about people who go to different restaurants. Well, great. Mm-hmm. That's terrific. It has to be a show about going to Joe Blow's restaurant, where Joe, who used to be a circus acrobat until he met his wife, who's a truck driver, decided to put their two skills together. And now they run the Truck Stop Acrobat restaurant in Cleveland, where he works all day, she works all night. Their young daughter, who just got out of jail, is rehabbing by doing dishes, and their special dish is blah. You have to tell a story. Television is all about telling personal stories. So if you're looking to pitch on paper, you better be specific.
David, do you have any, I know this is kind of switching the subject slightly,
Feel
but
free.
do you have any diners in the Philadelphia area that you
it's been a while. We went to one diner that I recall in Philadelphia that was phenomenal. And to be honest, it's been so long, I don't remember the name. The fact of the matter is, Philly, Pennsylvania, second to New Jersey, is it's the number 2 diner location in America. So all I can suggest is walk in, look at the menu. It needs to be huge. It needs to feature certain items that a diner has to give you. Club sandwich, gyro, lox and bagel, some sort of mega omelet. And it needs to offer different, often ethnic specialties as the specialty of the day. And just keep an eye on it. If the waitress, and I don't mean to be sexist, but for the most part they're waitresses, if the waitress fulfills the stereotype of asking the customer, "How are you, hun?" have a seat.
Another question, David. This is maybe a little bit away from the type of programming that you do, but I've often wondered why the hamburger business has become so successful with McDonald's and Burger King and so forth in America, and the same, as far as I know, has not picked up with hot dogs.
It's an interesting question. It's a damn good question to which I have to give some thought, because I did burgers in my last book. I'm doing hot dogs in my next book. Hot dogs came out of a snacking background, something to pick up off a street stand, or something specifically to enjoy at a sporting event or a fair or carnival. Hamburgers developed from the original Hamburg steak that was brought here from Hamburg, Germany by immigrants, had no bun. It was chopped meat on a plate, similar to, I was joking around with my wife the other day. She's visiting her mom for a week, so I'm on my own. I said, it's okay. I'm going to go out and buy a whole bunch of Swanson Hungry Man Salisbury steak frozen dinners. But the hamburger developed more from a restaurant background. It was modified at that point when McDonald's and other chains married themselves in the 50s and 60s to America's growing interstate highway system, the growing move to the suburbs, a period of economic boom for non-marginalized communities. I mean, everything I'm talking about here applied to white people. McDonald's never gave a damn about anything other than middle-class white people for a very long time. Not just McDonald's, the whole fast food industry as it developed. But the timing was perfect to get a meal in your car. And that continues today. Now, what's happened in the burger industry these days, though, is kind of interesting, because you now have something called the Better Burger. Chains like Five Guys or Shake Shack that are positioning themselves as nearly as fast as a drive-through, but a much higher quality, better piece of meat.
I know In-N-Out Burgers is very popular.
Oh, In-N-Out Burger's fantastic, but it's a perfect example of mystique. When I couldn't get Coors beer east of the Rockies, back when I was maybe too young to even drink, but what the hell, it was the greatest beer on earth. When I went to school in Oklahoma, I realized it was rat piss. Okay, In-N-Out Burger, while not rat piss, is benefited greatly by its mystique. Yes, it's a very good hamburger, but it's as much the experience of going to In-N-Out Burger and asking for a double animal style that makes it special. I was shooting on the West Coast for my series a few years ago about beer called Beer Geeks. And we were in California. There was an In-N-Out Burger near the hotel. We went 3 nights in a row and sat on the hood of our rental car with animal style is with like slaw and this sort of French dressing, and just rolling down our cheeks and onto the car. It was the best. Was the meat the best? I don't know. The experience was great. I mean, I know the beef is fresh, although the fact of the matter is I did some great research in doing my chapter on burgers about the difference between fresh and frozen beef. And once you put that beef on a burger with sauces and condiments, even the meat scientists tell you it's unlikely you're going to know a difference. So it's a great selling point. In fact, I said to the founder of Five Guys, I said, meat scientists tell me that it's nothing more than a selling point. He said, well, it may well be, but it matters to me. So I kind of took a left there. Did I answer your question?
I think you did,
okay.
Yes. Well, sort of. You didn't really get much into the hot dogs situation.
Oh, the hot dog thing? I can't answer it. I'm still researching hot dogs.
Yeah.
I assume there's less of a profit margin on a dog. But I'll look into it for my next book, Eating While Standing.
I spent a considerable amount of money. I had a little snack food shop in Atlanta, and I spent a considerable amount of money to make pretzels on a real production line. And but I had a few other items like hot dogs and ice cream and milkshakes and Hawaiian shave ice. And I probably spent 1/20th, if that, on making hot dogs, and was named Best of Atlanta by the critics for the hot dogs. And I didn't really think about the hot dogs.
Well, but the thing about hot dogs that's so weird is you don't only cook a hot dog, you heat it up. And when you look at rankings of hot dogs, as much as anything, they are rankings of toppings. You know, if you get a decent dog, the question boils down to what are you putting on top of it? And that's fine. I like a good dog, but as I said, it's a cooked product you heat up. I've caused a massive shift in the universe. No one said a word.
Sorry, I'm looking at Phines is having some issues.
Oh, okay.
With the connection. I'm sorry.
Hi, Phines.
Listening to you.
Yeah.
On this podcast, we talk a lot about trying to get the most out of every day and maximize our potential so that we can spend time on things that we really love doing. With Instacart, you can save time and money by getting your groceries delivered right to your door in as little as an hour. With Instacart, you match up with personal shoppers that are local to your area so that they can do the shopping for you. You can add multiple stores to a single order to make sure that you get all of your favorite ingredients. Shoppers also pick out the freshest produce, and they keep your eggs safe, which has always been a huge issue for me personally when I'm trying to order from other grocery services. On Instacart, you can also see highlighted deals so that you can save your money and your time. So get to that passion project that you've been putting off and try out Instacart. If you click on the link in the show notes below, not only will you be supporting Grandpa and Chill because we know you love us, you'll also get free delivery on your first order over $35. So what are we doing here? Click on the link and try out something new.
I was just going to say that Grandpa is very modest. He had a life dedicated to pretzels and is very big in the snack food game, I would say.
Oh,
this is true.
Oh,
yeah.
You have my deep respect, sir. One of my chapters in my next book is going to be road trip rations, and if you had if you have experience in the snack game, perhaps we should chat offline.
Happy to do so.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, he's the inventor of the pretzel cone. I didn't even put together how you guys could geek out over the snack.
Oh, it's great.
But yeah, he's. Yeah,
you invented the pretzel cone?
I'm going to send you a new link.
Woohoo! Hello.
Years later that it was their idea, but they basically copied. It's interesting about newspapers. They reported something about me back in the, I guess it was the mid 60s. And then they had almost the identical article about somebody else of the same product 20-some years later.
Yeah, look, it boils down to, it's more than newspaper. It boils down to the individual reporter and their level of diligence and concern. I'm not a believer in the concept of intentional fake news. I am a believer in the concept that the overall quality of journalists is not what it used to be, and that shows in the product.
I was very interested because you said the golden age of network news past tense. As someone who's in the news, I find that very interesting.
Well, we used to look. A year after the famous famine in Ethiopia, I took a team back to Ethiopia, correspondent, crew, myself, with no idea what story we were going to bring back. All we told New York was somebody got to go see what the hell's going on there. So we spent a week in Ethiopia, traveling all over the place, cadging rides with the RAF. We must have spent $75,000, and we came back and put together one really good 4-minute piece for nightly news. The financial pressures of the fact that news divisions have been turned into profit centers since those days means you can't do that anymore. That fewer and fewer correspondents are going to fewer and fewer places now that technology allows pictures to be sent in from places where There is no correspondent smelling the nuance of the story. It's it's not what it used to be. Also, let's be fair about something else. America is, and I don't mean this in a terrible way, we have an ocean on each side of us, which causes us to be naturally xenophobic. Threats to our existence are far away. So as a country, we tend to view everything through the prism of, my old Jewish grandfather used to view every news event through the following prism. Is it good for the Jews or bad for the Jews? Okay. Americans look at everything in the world as, what does it mean to us? And our ability to cover the rest of the world was greatly reduced once the Soviet Union fell apart and the Berlin Wall came down, because what had kept Americans interested in stories from Europe was the possibility that there would be a nuclear war that destroyed us. Once that possibility went away, when the wall opened and the Soviet Union collapsed, news executives in New York all said, great, we'll set up bigger bureaus in Bonn and here. And then 10 minutes later, they said, nobody gives a shit. And they cut back. Because the fact of the matter is, the kind of story that can be of interest on the BBC about developments in the European community, or frankly, developments in various African countries, which is a continent that the United States, for a number of reasons, including racism, ignores. If you listen to the BBC radio, there are always some stories from very small places elsewhere in the world that are reported because it's news and it ought to be reported. And by the way, I'm not a huge fan of the BBC in a number of respects. I frankly think that their editorial positions tend to be anti-Semitic. But I've put my bias on the table in that respect. Nonetheless, they are, for the most part, a pretty good broker of information from around the world. And I recently resubscribed to The Economist only because I feel guilty that in the many years since I left international coverage, I, like every other American, don't know jack shit about what's going on in the rest of the world. So my little tiny dipping my toe in the water is to try to make myself read The Economist newsletter every morning. I don't know. That rambled all to hell. I must be getting senile. I ramble a lot now.
Well, I don't know. I think maybe with what's going on right now in Ukraine, I don't know so much. Know for certain what's going to happen. Nuclear wise.
Well, no, but see, the Ukraine is a fascinating example of no news operation, not for a bad reason, but Henry Kissinger, war criminal that he may have been, was the first geopolitical thinker to use the term realpolitik. The fact of the matter is, we can't do anything about Ukraine. Our options are start a world war or sit there and take it. And nobody in the United States that I have seen in any media capacity has had the cojones to say that. Nor has anyone had the cojones to say, the last time we had a situation like this, it was the Russians putting missiles in Cuba. So can you see any of this from Putin's point of view? And I'm not defending Putin. He shouldn't go into Ukraine. But I just, look, I'm to the left of Trotsky, okay? I'm a liberal New York Jew with extremely leftist social views, so let's be clear. But when I look at the Republican lawmakers bitching and moaning that Biden isn't doing, what the hell do you want him to do? Set off nukes? The fact of the matter is, we are not willing to risk a nuclear war over this. It is technically his neighborhood. He's going to do it, and we're going to eat it. So say that.
What about if he could convince all of the members of NATO to put in the Ukraine into NATO immediately?
Personally, I think that is a scary and mistaken thing to do. I think this is not going to be a popular sentiment, but I think NATO buttressing directly up against what had been the Soviet Union, Russia, with no buffer area whatsoever, is eternally going to piss off Russia. And I don't know how much benefit Poland is providing to NATO or Romania. They're getting the benefit of the Mutual Defense Pact. But let's be real clear here. If Putin were to attack Romania, would the West really be willing to trigger a nuclear war over that? You know, the reality of life is ugly.
At what point do you say no? This has got to stop.
Well, at what point do you want to trigger a nuclear war?
Well, you don't.
I understand. I sound like Neville
do.
Chamberlain, and that's not what I believe. At some point, you have to say no, thank you.
You don't think that Putin, if all of the other countries in Europe and some others outside of Europe joined together and brought the Ukraine in, that wouldn't push Putin back?
I don't know. I'm not that smart.
Testing the waters.
The problem is no one's that smart. Everybody writes stuff. The Wall Street Journal writes what it writes. The New York Times writes what it writes. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to answer the question. But understand something. I mean, life in Europe, or the political situation in Europe, is far more complex than those of us over here can even begin to understand. I remember I was doing a pre-NATO summit piece and decided to go to Luxembourg in an attempt to make it not the most boring thing ever and talk to them because they had the smallest army in NATO. And I remember, to my surprise, this was as Germany was ascending as a unified power, an awful lot of people in Luxembourg weren't too thrilled about having Germany ascending because they remembered what Germany did to Luxembourg in World War II. So it's very hard to ever consider the possibility of everybody in Europe singing Kumbaya. That said, look, Putin's evil. Putin's a monster. The reality is we can't stop him from what he's doing right now without risking a nuclear war, and I'm not willing to do that.
I think the other thing, too, is that, like, with a lot of, like, pretty much every other ultra-rich oligarch or person in the world, you know, there's pretty much nothing you can do to them to really hurt them or sway them unless you somehow find a way to directly attack or affect that
and
yacht load of money. You know, he's
especially
like,
if they have nukes.
Well, I mean, not even that, but like, you know, people like Putin and like Kim Jong-un and like
there have been allegations that Putin is the richest man in the world.
Right, but and like even all of his other, like, you know, Russian
His
oligarch
buddies?
colleagues, they don't care. You know, if you put some kind of economic sanction on them, they do not care. That affects everybody that works for them, and they already were like piss poor anyway because they work for oligarchs.
What's his name? Who's the guy who owns Oracle? Hell, come on, help me out here. At one point, he was the richest man in the world, and then he fell. Larry Ellison. We interviewed Ellison right after he had overtaken, at the time, Bill Gates as richest man in the world, and then he had fallen back to number 2. And we asked him in the interview, does that bother you? And he said, with this huge sneer on his face, it won't impact my ability to educate my children. I mean, there's a point at which you have so much money that it just doesn't goddamn matter.
No.
Okay. I've reached that point, and therefore I'm ending. No,
Yeah.
But if you have, let's say, a young kid that's a criminal and he's done some bad things, and you don't stop him, and then he ends up murdering somebody later on because you didn't stop him, Is there no analogy to that, to what's going on right
Look,
now?
there's
with,
plenty of analogies,
He's not some
Grant.
poor,
Look,
Aladdin in Agrabah, stealing bread to feed his monkey pal. He's
Look.
literally like the Lex Luthor or the something like that.
the
Like,
question is, can you stop him? And let me be clear, no one has a good answer to this. If Putin started putting my fellow Jews in extermination camps, as Hitler did, then I would be jumping up and down saying we must intervene. Everyone has their own triggers. But I'm telling you, I'm personally not willing to risk nuclear war over what Putin does to Ukraine.
So
do you,
my
prefer Ukrainian food or Russian food?
Ukrainian, actually.
Kind of a joke.
No, the food in Kiev, well, now I guess it's called Kiev. The food in Kiev is fantastic. Just,
so my my best friend, I've been to Kiev and Kharkiv. My best friend is Ukrainian and he lives in Kharkiv, and Kharkiv is it's about 5 hours north of the two cities
Right.
that Russia has now invaded. And I was very worried about him because Kharkiv is it's 30 minutes from the border of Russia from the north. But I said, I sent him an article, and they've been saying this for the past 2 weeks. And then when they invaded, I was like, they invaded. Are you safe? And he texted me. He's like, I don't know if you can read that.
I'm high. What? Okay, that's a good way to go.
Honestly, yeah.
So, yeah, interesting when you're on the ground,
No, but when you're on the ground in places, it's a different view. I remember during the Romanian Revolution was the first time I ever saw real bang bang. And I'm not a war correspondent. I've seen far less in the way of bang bang than many people. But when the Romanian Revolution broke out, I organized I was in Budapest, a convoy of international journalists to break through the border between Hungary and Romania, which was easy to do because that part of Romania, Transylvania, was home to ethnic Hungarians. So they saw this convoy of foreign news vehicles coming, and they said, come on down. Anyway, we get to Timișoara, where there was a lot of shooting going on. And I was with George Lewis, who is a very, very senior correspondent who had done his time in Vietnam. And we're in front of the hotel. We get out of the car, and all of a sudden, a bunch of AKs go off. Bang, 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 bang. I don't know how I got there, but suddenly I'm on the asphalt, and George is next to me. And I look at him and say, what do we do now? And this was before George had stopped drinking. So he reached into his backpack, pulled out a fifth of something, unscrewed the top, and said, this is what we do. So that's what it's like on the ground.
David, can you recommend any good minority restaurants or operations, food operations?
You mean ethnic restaurants?
Diners. Pardon?
You mean ethnic restaurants?
Yes.
Are you're in Philly?
I'm in Philly.
Okay,
right.
Go to the south side. There is a food truck called, what's the name of it? The food truck Poblano. Even though the food I'm sending you there for is not Poblano, they have decided to make birria de res, that Jalisco dish that really took off after it was popularized in Tijuana. It's kind of a spicy beef stew that's served in grilled tacos. Go to that truck. It is some of the absolute finest regional Mexican food on the face of the earth. If you want,
is that a taco?
It's called it's birria tacos, and the name of the truck is the something Poblano taco truck. It's been written up in Philly Magazine. Go there. See, I'm on Long Beach Island. I drive 90 minutes. I'm there. So you and I are going to get together and eat.
Yeah.
I strongly recommend that. If you can get yourself to New York City, go to Flushing. to any of the major food malls there to sample Chinese food as eaten in China. Much of it is awful. Much of it is, on first glance, not what an American would want to eat. But I got to tell you something. They do things with tendon and artery and duck blood that will just knock you on your ass. I mean, really.
Phines is in
What?
Phines is in Queens. Phines is in Queens now, and I used to live
Well,
there. when I
Phines,
was
you know what
a
I'm talking about.
freshman.
What is it? The World Mall?
I haven't been there.
It's phenomenal. It's in my book. It's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. I was born in Flushing when it was Jewish and Italian. Now it's almost entirely Asian, and it's representative of the fact that there now are enough Chinese immigrants, recent Chinese immigrants, especially professionals and grad students, that you can make a living selling Chinese food as if it were in China to recent Chinese immigrants here. And by the way, I mean, this opens a whole other door. There's nothing wrong with Chinese American food. It's a cuisine of its own, and we shouldn't put it down. You know, there's the authenticity debate. Is this what they eat in China? Well, the fact of the matter is, right now, one of the most popular dishes in China is scrambled eggs and tomatoes, so get off your high horse. But, you know, if you're looking for food as eaten in a particular place, I would strongly recommend that. Let me think. What else am I thinking about?
Yeah.
I don't know, Gramps. That's what comes right to mind right now.
Nice.
Yeah. Phines and I live, I won't say what station, but in one of the most popular stations in Astoria, Queens. And that, I think, maybe it was wrong, but I read somewhere that our neighborhood was the most different cuisines in any.
Well, Queens itself is the most ethnically diverse food universe in the world. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, the food in Astoria was,
Yeah.
I miss it very much. Like, I don't live in New York anymore.
Fine, is you going to say anything? You're back. You live in Queens. Talk to me about food.
No, I'm silently judging you.
Oh, okay, fine.
Keep
Well,
talking.
I
Keep
assume
talking.
I'm going to lose, so what the hell?
You're not.
No, Queens, but see, Queens is a phenomenal example of the premise of my book, which is that we've created our own cuisine by taking bits and pieces of other countries' and cultures' foods and then modifying them to our tastes. I mean, nobody in Greece eats a gyro that's shaved off that big cone of fake meat. I mean, it's meat. It's just kind of mushed meat. If you've ever had a real gyro, which is, you know, you take a hunk of chicken and a hunk of lamb and a hunk of chicken and a hunk of lamb, and you build this pyramid and then you cook it. That's a wonderful thing. But there's nothing wrong with the gyro that I eat on the boardwalk in Atlantic City. It is a Greek American dish, and I love it. I mean, we have done wonderful things with the foods that we've taken from other places, and we shouldn't be ashamed of that. There's a lot of, that's not authentic. Well, of course it's not authentic, for Christ's sake. Mellow out. It's the Americanized version of something. And when you go to Tokyo and you go to Pizza Hut, that's not Italian pizza either. That's an American dish being sold to Japanese with influences of Italy that no one even remembers. So you got to be kind of accepting about what happens to food.
Very true.
Yeah. Where do I start?
Go ahead, Vinus.
Let's see. I'm trying to think about all this stuff. I missed a lot of it. I'm not a lot of it. I was in and out for some of it.
Well, that's the end of the martini.
Yeah. Oh, good. For
Final
another one.
stretch.
Start of a new one.
After we're done. Now, Vinus, seriously, what interests you about food?
The taste.
Yeah.
It's good. And the nutrition that keeps me fed. I wouldn't be able to live without it. I think there's it's a lot of interesting stuff about it, like you said. I guess we'll go back to the very, very beginning of the conversation. Like when we were talking, that first sparked my head was your favorite meat and how it was very slow and you had to like cook it very well to find the right for it because you didn't have really good meat. And it does make me think of like America and how it's like progressed over time. Where when I think about a meat that's cheap, it's not time. I mean, it's whatever I can quickly go to, eat and go to work for because I need to eat. So I think of a whole different.
Well, that's chicken.
Yeah.
But that gets to a whole other conversation. Have you been seduced into the skinless, boneless chicken breast? Or do you have the guts to cook dark meat chicken, which has fat and flavor?
I probably would go to whatever the quickest.
Okay, well.
I mean, it just depends.
Okay, here's what you do, dude. Once a week, you take a chicken. You put it in a frying pan with some vegetables around it, salt, pepper, and garlic. You pour a little stock in so it doesn't get dry. You put it in a 500-degree oven. Everyone out there is shitting their pants. Trust me. You put it in a 500-degree oven. You sprinkle a little more garlic on the top. You come back in an hour. You can eat for a week. That's all it takes. It's that. See, quick is, when we're done tonight, I'm going down and make a pot of red sauce because I got some Italian sausage that's about to die. My wife's coming back tomorrow. So I'm going to make a pot of red sauce and a pot of dog food out of chicken thighs. That's as quick as anything. Okay? Here's a favorite dish of mine.
Well, hold on, brother.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and you asked me to talk. I'm gonna go ahead and finish then.
Okay.
Yeah. Let the dog out now. No, but that's not so much the question I was asking about quickly making meals. It's just the interesting part of how quickly we've changed from a piece of meat that was cheap that took a long time, and now I would pay top dollar for something that was really, even though it was something that was that's the thought process in my head when you were talking about that, which is like how things have changed, where something that is slow cooked, I think even if it's a bad piece of meat, would probably cost more than maybe something very quickly made from, like, I don't know, McDonald's or something like that.
Yeah, but but that's a whole other issue. I mean, one of the issues in when you look at socioeconomic factors as they impact health is the fact that the poorer the population, the more these people who have no money are lured into the McDonald's dollar meal, and it has a direct impact on health. I'd rather buy cheap meat and cook it myself. Now, I say that from the privileged position of being able to buy whatever the hell I want, but I still buy. I'm not a vegan. I'll never be a vegan. I love meat, but I'm including much more non-meat in my diet. And my wife and I signed up for Misfits, which is a service that will send you vegetables that are ugly so they couldn't be sent to the supermarkets. And we're living on roasted vegetables these days. I mean, I just put some tin foil on a baking tray, a little olive oil, and I cut up whatever vegetables they sent me and do a little salt, pepper, cumin, and there's an Italian spice, the oregano. Turn the oven on to about 400, put them in. When they come out, I eat them. I mean, we're doing a lot of that these days. Buffy, come here. The dog wants to be part of the conversation. Yes, Buffy, come here. Hold on. I have to throw a treat under the supposedly immobile bookcase.
Puppet.
There we go. I'm back.
I think this is a long time ago. Joke first, Brandon. You said put cheese on chicken parmesan to take the, whatever. So a good idea maybe. And I think you just need supervision, Brandon, which is also romantically. Just go ahead and throw that in there. I need to be watched. I don't know if I'm gonna burn something in there.
That's gonna be.
But grilled cheese probably. There's a lot of cheese on that.
Grilled cheese is a great dish.
It's real hard
See?
to fuck that.
Grilled cheese is fantastic.
Throw some cheese. Throw more cheese on it. Yeah.
The latest hack, of course, is to coat the outside of the bread with mayonnaise instead of butter.
Disgusting.
Ooh.
Yeah, it gives it a better, sweeter flavor and more of a browning.
Nasty.
Or so
You know
I'm
what I've been
told.
doing a lot is a peanut butter and cheese like tortilla. You just like
I'm sorry, back
put,
up.
like-
Hold on. I'll eat pretty much anything, but I'm about to vomit.
He said, "Hold the
this is-
fuck up."
What the? What are you doing? I'm feeding the dog to try to shut her up. Keep going.
Well, we can see her. I mean, we
I wanna
can
see
stop
this
the.
puppy,
we
bro.
we
I
do.
don't like it.
Phines has a dog. I had a cat.
She's not coming anywhere
Oh,
near here. She just wants treats.
Oh,
It's
okay.
fine.
What kind of dog do you have?
She's a puggle.
Aw.
You hear her?
Oh,
There you go.
they're cute.
Buffy.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm going to. You ready to
No
destroy the illusion?
Destroy it for the
I'm
puppy.
excited.
Okay, here we go. Where are you, Buff? What the hell? Come on in.
Come
Nope.
here.
Okay, the bookcase is back down.
God.
You were extolling the
She
virtues
said, "What the
of
hell?
grilled
That
cheese.
bookcase just came apart."
No, grilled cheese is a wonderful thing. What's wrong with that?
No, peanut butter
No,
and
it's
cheese.
lovely.
What
No,
was
peanut
going
butter
on?
and grilled cheese is bad. But see, peanut butter on a hamburger is great.
That's the Elvis. I had that for the
Yeah,
first
but it's
time
always
recently.
much more than that. The fact of the matter is,
Yeah.
we see peanut butter as kind of a childhood taste, when in fact there are many cultures that use peanuts as a major element, and most obviously being Thai cuisine. So if talking about quick meals, peanut butter, a can of coconut milk, some red pepper, salt and pepper in a pot, warm it up, and then that's your sauce for some noodles, and now you've got Thai noodles. If you've got scallions, chop them up, but that whole thing is like 15 minutes max.
You know what,
What?
David? You need to go after this, and I really implore you to watch our cooking episode.
I will. I'll go there immediately.
Please do.
Look at Brandon.
Why?
I can't
Why
stand
did
him. He's got bad lighting.
No, please do. Please do.
I will.
Good stuff.
Yeah,
It's
but
good
see, to
stuff.
me, travel is all about the food. I'm going to
Yeah.
do a
I
talk
agree.
in.
I love food.
I'm doing a talk in Cleveland next week, and I got this whole thing. I got it built around to visit the Slyman's Deli, which I've heard about for years, which supposedly is great corned beef. So that's the essence of that trip.
I'm a Jew from New Jersey, and I find it shocking because you get so used to it. I mean, I grew up there, never really left, but like the lack of diners and delis and places that just make sandwiches, it's like non-existent in most places outside of the New York.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got in California, you have coffee shops. When I first started diners, guy had no idea what a diner was. He was a West Coast guy. He knew coffee shops. There are cafes. There are there's all sorts of places that you go to for a quick meal, depending upon where you live. The diner was just something very special. And, it's not endangered. It's the peak has passed. But a wonderful diner is a wonderful thing. Even a second-rate diner is a wonderful thing. Yeah. Well, but Jersey, arguably speaking, we have between 600 and 700 diners in Jersey because we're the coolest. That's all there is to it.
Do you think a diner is, since you're so world traveled, is it like a specific American thing, or is that something
A
that
diner is a
around the world?
completely American thing. Now, the concept of a place you go to eat local food quickly, I mean, you don't eat anything quickly in France, but that is international. But the diner itself, growing out of the original food cart that Walter Scott started using to sell food in front of the Providence newspaper late at night in the 1890s, that then grew into the concept of initially a prefab restaurant that could be transported by train or truck, that eventually someone figured out if we cut it in half and made it a double wide, you could transport each piece by train or truck. That is a completely American construction. And by the way, diners were never repurposed rail cars. They just looked like them. The concept of the diner, which initially was either one wide or two wide, kitchen visible, counter with seats, booths optional, menu of homemade dishes produced in front of you. That's a very special thing, and it's developed over the years in any number of ways. But it's just something special about a diner. I mean, I just adore diners. That you know, the scene in Goodfellas, the scene where the guy gets quote hijacked and then comes in and uses a racial epithet, blah blah blah. I mean, that is such the diner, and I believe that was the Jackson Hole Diner in Queens. I know the exterior shot of Ray Liotta and what's his name, the little guy, in front of the diner. I know that was at the Jefferson Hole Diner because they explained to me how they did it. There's nothing more American than a diner. It's just great. Hello, dog.
Yeah, it makes me think of like Quentin Tarantino films and stuff like that, and it makes me put a whole different spin on it because that's so amazing.
Diner.
Yeah, exactly, and it makes me think about America. This is also another question that popped into my head since I'm speaking what's on my head, I guess, since it's my job as a host. America is a fun place, right? Interesting, because when Grandpa was like ethnic food, it made me think of like, when does it cross the line between ethnic food? Because this is like America's a bunch of immigrants, right? So when does it become like when did it become American food, and then when does it go to ethnic food, and when did that happen? Like, why is when I go to a diner thinking like this sausage and egg is American, but then I go somewhere else and go, this is ethnic as hell.
Well, if it's Boudin sausage, then it's New Orleans.
Whoa.
If it's generic sausage, it's American. If it's scrapple, it's Philly. If it's Taylor ham, it's Jersey. I mean, if it's liver mush, it's what, Kentucky? I made a distinction in my book. I chose to consider items as part of American cuisine if they were pretty much available everywhere and they were an everyday go-to option for just about everybody, which is why I posit in the book that sushi is part of American cuisine, but Thai cuisine is not. Sushi is now something available everywhere. Every high school student in America thinks about having it when they have a choice. It's at Walmart. It's at CVS. Thai food, as good as it is, and as popular as it is, hasn't crossed that boundary into complete availability, complete consideration every day. That, to me, is my own constructed differentiation. Buffy, if I give you more treats, you're going to explode.
Papa.
World's fattest puppy.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Grandpa. You gonna say something?
No, I was just going to ask, and I'm kind of off the subject. Do you have any thoughts about how the prices of food is escalating?
Yeah, I think it sucks. I think
I went in and got a Dairy Queen, a little dip ice cream the other day with dipped in chocolate. A little cone with chocolate. $4.
That's not ice cream. It's
crazy. No,
it's whatever the hell it is.
Dessert.
I'm just saying, all food seems to be really going up.
Look, I told you I was to the left of Trotsky. I believe there's a lot of opportunistic price gouging going on in all sorts of American business right now. When you look at profits versus costs versus prices, I think there's a lot of cause for crying foul. I feel like I should keep talking, but I made my position clear. I think there's a lot of horseshit going on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So
Yeah.
maybe you're a revolutionist.
No, I'm an old liberal. That's all. I just think we should try to be responsible, and I think that billionaires who sponsor fundraisers to raise $100,000 when they could eradicate a particular problem by giving $2 billion that they'd never miss are full of shit. But I'm just an old leftist.
Yeah.
Why? Oh, sorry. You go, Phines.
No, go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, I was just gonna ask why do you, is it because of COVID, or why do you think the opportunistic price gouging is?
Well, I think COVID and the talk of inflation has given everyone an opportunity to do what they're doing.
Do you think that so people are taking all of the sort of outrage or news cycle of inflation and using it to be like, well, this is a great excuse to raise?
Of course. Look, you're going to get me on a podcast about my book, a deep discussion about corporate responsibility. But I personally believe that corporate responsibility exceeds the responsibility to produce maximum gains for your shareholders and involves some acknowledgement of the role that society has played in allowing you to get stupidly rich, and acknowledging that you owe something to the greater good. But that's just me. And I've tried to live that life. During the 10 minutes that I was making stupid money doing diners, I tried to follow my moral beliefs in terms of giving and such. And I just find it, I'm not sure it's going to help me sell books, but I find the current
Hilarious
concept of the billionaire class deeply offensive. If you want to fly into space, great, but why don't you give like 20 of your 200 million to the American school system, or to children who can't eat, or to people living on the streets? And look, I lived in Europe long enough to have developed a deep appreciation for the social safety net. My wife is dealing with a somewhat incapacitated older brother who has to leave the apartment he's in. Her 103-year-old mother needs to sell that apartment, all sorts of stuff. And in looking for where to land the older brother, it's not like American society provides anything. Here's a guy who can't work, who really has no income. I'll probably have to pay for the remainder of his life. That doesn't seem reasonable to me. But that's what we are as a culture now. Boy, this has taken a left turn, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I was thinking when he said something about Ukraine, like, is that in his book?
No, Ukraine is not my book. But unlike most Americans, I have been to Ukraine back when it was called the Ukraine.
Yeah, very true.
No, I'm just giving you just joshing. Well, you know what? We'll go back to your book, because I actually do have questions about your book and your dining. You know what? I'll save your neck a bit. I try to do the same. That's why I stay quiet. Lots of times I'm like, I better save my neck here.
I just finished. My daughter just got her MFA in poetry from Columbia.
Ooh.
After going there as an undergraduate as well, which basically means I have no money left. So sell some fucking books, would you?
Exactly. Or get that old rotisserie boy out and start getting that meat real slow, like you were saying. I guess I am interested. This is really what is the thing that's most interesting to me about you. Aside from I love that you're a writer, and I like to write and stuff like that. But I love that you're a journalist.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think that's a very tough and hard. This is a thing. That's But the question about your books, okay? The thing that I was thinking about, 11 seasons with your show. It's 30 something seasons. You're not getting paid. That's
life.
Yeah, but I want to know how you feel about it. How do
The
you like?
economics of American television are what they are. At the time I got the show, I was thrilled to have the show. I knew what the ground rules were when I went in. I am not going to retroactively complain.
Yeah,
Do I have
me,
personal
yeah.
issues? Sure. Should I share them with anyone? No. You know,
Okay.
they met their terms of their contract. I met the terms of it. I knew going in there were no residuals. That's life.
I mean, I'm probably projecting, but you're a little bit. I mean, it's got to be proud though too to get like 11. I
No,
mean,
I
to
look.
have
I
the
am very proud of what I achieved because where the hell are you, dog? I believe, at the risk of sounding like an egotistical asshole, that I did redefine a genre and I was able to produce the show that I wanted to produce. That is very unusual in television. And if I was able to do that for 11 seasons, more power to me. And, it's, no one said anything would be fair, but no one was unfair. I mean, that's life.
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Another
No,
question.
go
Sorry
right
about
ahead.
books. Sorry. What do you think? What do you think the difference is between writing a book and being a
Well,
journalist?
there's no
What do you
difference.
think
I
they're different
approach the
hats?
book the same way I approach diners, the same way I approached anything else, which is Buffy, Buffy, Buffy,
She wants to
which
be on
is
camera.
find the facts, tell the truth as you can discern it, don't make anything up, acknowledge what you don't know, and confirm whatever you think is a fact, which is why I'm very
Ooh.
proud that one of the things I did in the book was not repeat all of the legends about food that are unprovable or known to be bullshit. Um,
Yeah.
you know, what the hell's the place in New Haven? Louis Lunch is glad to tell you they invented the hamburger. I can't prove that. All I can tell you is that they say it, but these other places say it too. That's journalism is curiosity and intelligence. That's all it is. It's the ability to say to someone, to not be afraid to say to someone, I may not know anything about this. Could you please educate me? And then attempting to confirm the truth or falsity of what people tell you. That's all it is. I mean, when I was hiring for journalistic positions at my company, I didn't look for experience in television. I didn't even look for experience in journalism. I looked for intelligence and curiosity. That's it.
Wow. Do you think that's what is that what got you into journalism in general? That your curiosity
No,
and seek for truth, or
probably. I mean, what originally got me into it was that I thought it'd be cool to be on the radio. And then after I was on the radio for a while, Woodward and Bernstein started publishing all these articles. And I started thinking it would really be cool to be Woodward and Bernstein. And then I realized I absolutely love this. At the age of, I don't know, 19 or 20, working for a radio station in Oklahoma City, I was sent to a press conference with Miss America. And just because I was kind of a heavily bearded, long-haired, greasy dickhead who didn't really want to be interviewing Miss America, I asked her the following question. Have you ever used marijuana? And she said yes. Her name was Tawny Godin. She went on to a long career in television, but I experienced the thrill of making news, and it was nonstop from there.
wow, love to see it. Do you do
I
podcasting?
don't do podcasting because, well, for a number of reasons. When I get in front of a mic, if I'm not doing someone else's podcast, I retain a deep interest in radio. That's where I first started when I was 15 at WCAT Orange, Massachusetts, the kitty cat with the 1,000-watt meow. Anyway, I've always been a radio fan, and you can't do music in a podcast. I'd love to do a podcast about the music of the 20s, 30s, and 40s, the Great American Songbook. But ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC have not come to any major licensing agreement with the podcast industry. So instead, I've signed a deal with a syndicator to do a radio show called Martini Music, which is all about the music of the 30s, 40s, and early 50s.
Cool.
Ooh. If I know America any, radio will be back on top.
I don't need them
in a
to be
little
on
bit,
top.
as soon
I
as it
just
becomes
need
super-
100 stations to pick me up, and that'll be fine. But to me, it's the timeless music that just doesn't go away, and I love it. I had been doing a little tiny radio show for a community station down here in South Jersey called Simply Classic.
I did not know I could play. So if I make a radio station right now, I can play whatever I want. I can play any music.
Well, look, it's to some extent people need the assistance of curation. Mm-hmm. The thing that my show at the little tiny station did and that my syndicated show will do is it's going to tell you some stuff you didn't know that makes the music more interesting. For example, Sing, 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 Benny Goodman's signature song, was actually written by Louis Prima. Now, most people don't know that. Let's listen to Louis Prima's version from 1928. That sort of thing. Now, it makes me the ultimate nerd, but we're pitching selling the show now to various stations, and it funded the purchase of this microphone. So I hope I sound really damn good.
Wow,
nice.
That's pretty cool.
You know, it's interesting because I'm old. I'm 67. I believe you need to continue reinventing yourself, or you get old. In my 50 years in journalism, I've shape-shifted. I've always done something new. I've done this, I've done that. You know, the fact that I ended up viewed in the industry as a food journalist cracks me up, given the fact that as an investigative journalist, I've had weapons pulled on me, and that as an international journalist, I've dodged a couple of bullets, not many. And now I'm known for food journalism, which okay, that's fine.
David, have you ever thought about opening a restaurant?
No, because
I know it's totally different from what you do, but I'm just...
Well, no, here's the problem.
Right.
Everyone in America has a stove, so everyone thinks they can open a restaurant. They can't. Most restaurants fail. It takes an amazing set of skills. I don't have them. It's the same as everyone has a TV set. They think they can invent a TV show. Look at TikTok. Most of that stuff sucks. I respect the people who run restaurants immensely, and I have none of the skills that are required to do that.
Well, was a radio talk show host in Atlanta, and he either took over or started. I think he took over a restaurant. It's successful.
Who?
It's called the Blue. Actually, it's right across the street from the WSB Tower.
Was he at SB?
WSB, yeah.
You see, I used to work in Atlanta. I worked at XIA Television, and WSB TV was right down the street. And on the wall, we had a frame with glass on it, and behind the under the frame, it said, "In case of emergency, break glass." And under the glass was a WSB TV employment application. So,
well, this restaurant was right across the street in kind of a little, I think it's like pie-shaped piece of property, and it was owned, if I remember correctly, it was owned by a guy who had been a radio talk show host.
Really?
At one time.
Okay, yeah. So presumably he used his fame to bring people in and hired some people who knew how to run a restaurant. But
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And the other question I want to ask you, because you sound like you've really been around as far as knowing. I'm trying to find out from you, where's good restaurants to go, like around, like if I go into Jersey, I know there's like Ponzio's Diner.
Well, the Jefferson Diner is amazing. You know that.
Where is that located?
Jefferson Township, kind of up north. Right here on LBI, we have a restaurant called The Gables, which is as good as any Manhattan restaurant you'll find anywhere. Their specialty is duck breast, and it is phenomenal. Now, The Gables is also, I'm trying to keep the dog quiet, is also a B&B. So if you're taking a trip from Philly, you could come in, book a room at The Gables, and what I would suggest, have dinner at The Gables that night, and then the next morning drive to the north tip of the island, that's 17 miles, to Mustache Bill's, which is a diner I put on Diners originally, which has won the James Beard American Classic Award. It's absolutely phenomenal. What's that?
Mustache Bill's.
Mustache
and what
Bill.
town is it in?
It's the northern tip of Long Beach Island, so
is that the same as Long Island?
No. Long Beach Island,
I don't know
where
that
I
area,
live,
so that's why I'm asking.
is the first sandbar north of Atlantic City. And if you just...
Isn't that Brigantine?
No, Brigantine's different. Just Google LBI.
LBI.
Now,
okay.
most of the places on LBI that tell you they make pancakes, make them out of a goddamn mix. Don't go there. But go to Mustache Bill's. It's one of the great, and they make something that most people think is disgusting, but from scratch, they make cream chip beef that will knock you on your ass. And they
They used to have a name for it.
Pancakes that will just blow your mind.
Okay.
I love it. The pancake part, not that other thing.
Sorry, I've been cutting in and out. Are you able to
Talking about
to
being
hear me?
liberal, I think of myself as being quite liberal, but I have a wife who I call her a communist or something. I don't know. She's left of left.
Well, okay. Like I said, I'm to the left of Trotsky, so
We stand Linda on this podcast. That's perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry to take it in a different direction. I've been unable to hear for a little bit, but I did want to ask. You talk a lot about Americanized foods, for example, like the Italian pizza, right? We have that here. I've heard frequently that there are not really many or any dishes that are true, like American, right? Like coming from the United States. What do you think about that?
Lobster is a dish. When I say we've accepted foods or assimilated foods from other countries or cultures, lobster was the food of the Native American culture. And when settlers got here and saw these big bug-like things, they didn't particularly want to eat them, but they also didn't want to starve. And the Native Americans taught them how to cook them by throwing them on coals, which, if you extend that a little bit to include clams, corn, and potatoes, that's your New England clam bake. So yes, lobster was originally here. Oysters were here too, but there had been a long tradition of eating oysters in Europe, so the concept came with the settlers. But no, lobster was something they looked at and said, "What the hell is that? And do you really want me to eat it?"
Can you imagine the terror if you just were...
But
I mean, it's incredible.
Now it's the most fancy.
Yeah,
but understand something.
Like a giant
Lobster
fish comes out of the water.
Lobster is the perfect example of the food of the poor becoming the food of the rich. Nobody wanted to eat lobster. You know, there's all these stories about prisoners petitioning not to eat lobster. We talk about investigative report. I couldn't prove that. I don't think that ever really happened. I think that's one of those bullshit stories that got popular. But the fact of the matter is, the last thing you wanted to eat as a former Englishman living on this land was lobster. And over the years, it became the hoity-toity thing to eat if you had a couple of bucks.
This is why I think you should stick with radio. You got to stick with it.
Because of lobster?
No, because it's going to come back around.
What's interesting with lobster is global warming is pushing the lobster area, the harvesting area, north. And there are already lobster fishermen in Maine who are exploring alternative means and alternative species to make a living on, because at some point, all of the lobstering will be in Canada.
Wow.
I thought Jews aren't supposed to eat shellfish.
Well, let me tell you a story. My grandfather, I'm Reformed, so it doesn't matter to me, but my grandfather claimed to keep kosher. And he was a remarkable guy, a defense attorney. At one point, he had been an assistant attorney general of New York State. And he used to tell me this great story, and I've never researched it because I really want it to be true. He always claimed that he personally ended the Tong wars among the various gangs in Chinatown, by sitting everyone down and saying, cut the bullshit or we'll deport you. I've never looked into it because I like it the way it is. But the fact of the matter is, my grandfather was given important status when he would take me to Mott Street to the Chinese restaurants. He obviously had done something with someone to be received the way he was. And we used to go eat in the restaurants downstairs, and his favorite dish was shrimps and lobster sauce. And unfortunately, my grandmother was not necessarily always the nicest person on earth. And she was pissed off at my grandfather one day, so she called the waiter over and forced him to explain that that dish, which my grandfather had always argued was really chicken, in fact contained shellfish. And from that day forward, he would not eat it. So she deprived him of one of the great dishes on earth. But it's interesting, Jews and Chinese food have a fascinating history, because the Chinese who set up in Chinatown were not racist in the way that much of America was in the 1800s. They themselves had been treated like absolute crap and had been violently forced out of much of the West Coast. So Chinese restaurants were sort of a refuge for Jews and African Americans. And at the same time, to new Jewish immigrants, eating at Chinese restaurants was sort of a way to get assimilated and feel American. And the food there was chopped up. All the protein was kind of hidden under vegetables and sauce, so it was easier to kind of convince yourself it was okay. And the term to cover it that was invented was treif. Is the Yiddish word. It means unclean, but what it really meant was non-kosher. And Chinese food was considered safe treif.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that.
Safe treif.
Interesting.
I love
Yes,
all the restaurants on Mott Street.
Oh.
I used to go there all the time.
It's great. We were, my wife and daughter and I were in Hong Kong for the Beijing Olympics. I don't know, what was it, 2008, something like that. My daughter was a competitive equestrian, not Olympic level, but we decided to go to the games to see the equestrian games. And the equestrian games were being held in Hong Kong, not mainland China. The cover story was to include Hong Kong in the games. The reality was nobody with $1 million horse was going to risk animal disease in mainland China. Anyway, so we're in Hong Kong. It was great. We're in the same hotel as the Olympic team. My daughter met them all, got a lot of swag. While we were there, I finally convinced one of the guys at the hotel. I said, I really want to eat at a locals restaurant. Not a place that you send tourists, but a place that people really eat. And I finally got the name and address of a place, and we went in. It was like Mott Street. It was downstairs. It was huge. It was like a football field of communal tables. Millions of people, and we were the only Caucasians there. And believe me, it's not like we were particularly welcome. I mean, we found a seat at a table and blah, blah, blah. And finally we got served, and they brought us implements and kind of this bowl of tepid water that we figured out we were supposed to clean our spoons in. Think of bird flu. Anyway, so it turns out it's like Mott Street. There's servers circulating with woven baskets of dim sum. And we're ordering this. The food's phenomenal. Finally, I pointed a basket, and an old guy to my right who hasn't said a word, certainly not in English, hasn't said a word to that point, suddenly pipes up and he says, "That not for you." And I figured, now it was duck foot. It was fine. It doesn't taste like anything. It's chewy, but that not for you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the help.
Wow. Hey, David, you asked me at the beginning, you're like, how long do we usually go?
Yeah, how
And,
long have we gone? I don't know.
It doesn't it fly by?
Hey,
Like,
you guys
crazy,
are fun to
right?
talk to. I'm enjoying myself. The dog's barking.
know.
I finished a martini. What the hell?
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny is before you got on, Grandpa's bird was going crazy, and now she's.
You got a
totally
bird?
fine,
What
but-
kind?
It's a conure. It's like a small parrot.
Oh, cool. Does she have a vocabulary?
She only knows vengeance.
Only anger and pain.
Do you let the bird out?
I have
Pick up the mic, for Christ's sake.
I have 4 birds. 3 are stay together in one room.
Uh-huh.
They fly loose during the day, and at night I put them in the cage. This one stays alone in another room, and she is free all the time.
Do they poop on the carpet?
Not too much, and their poop doesn't smell.
No,
It's not
I had.
like human-
No, this is not a joke.
Yeah.
When my daughter was young, we had a rabbit, and I loved this rabbit. It was like a dog, but it crapped everywhere. I mean, that you can't teach a rabbit not to crap. And that's the takeaway from today's podcast.
Good enough.
Exactly.
Hey, we always do last thoughts. I know we're a little over if anybody has to go, but I'd love. We've taken a long break, so I'm excited to go back to last thoughts.
From me?
Everybody, we can start with Grandpa.
David, I remember the name Mustache, but I don't remember the last
Mustache
name.
Bills on LBI.
On LBI.
Yeah, look,
that's
get
the
my
name of the
email
town?
address, and
Okay.
you and I are going to start talking, okay?
Mustache Bill. Okay.
Start.
Phines.
Also agree. You said something about Flushing's, some big mall. I'll talk to you about it. You had so much to say that one of these days I'm gonna have. Yeah, we'll have to retalk because I would like to. You feel like
Let's
I feel
hang
like there's
out.
a lot.
Let's go have a
lot we
meal.
can get into.
Okay.
Sounds fun. Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like you have a lot of knowledge about America, which I'm actually. You know what? I like America enough to be like, I'm interested in learning more about this place. You seem like know a lot about the music and the food, and
Let's have a
I'm
meal,
kind of
dude.
interested in seeing what's
I'm
up
in.
with that. So I have to pick your brain.
Sierra.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely have to come back really soon.
I'd love to.
You know, can't wait to see the book. Can't wait to check the book out. But you know, I really
Buy
wanna talk
12
to
or
you about-
15 copies. Grad school was expensive.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead
what-
and
yeah,
just
what's the
Food
name of the book
Americana.
again? Food Americana.
Yeah.
Guys, it's on Amazon.
It's on
Peep
all
it
the
out
online.
everywhere.
Everyone's
You
got
can
it.
peep it out.
There is
You
an
have an audiobook?
audiobook.
There's even an audiobook, people.
Yeah, there's an
Did
audiobook.
you read it yourself, or who read
No,
the
they didn't
audio?
want me to. They wanted
Disrespectful.
they got some guy who's like
What?
Mr. I read books, and
Wow.
he's very slow. Apparently audiobooks are read slowly, so that's okay. That's fine.
It's good. I always put them on 2x, but
So yeah,
Good
so I really
idea.
you gotta come back. I'd love to,
I'd be
really wanna
delighted
talk
to.
you
Thank
about,
you for inviting me.
TV production things,
Oh.
news things. I can't wait.
I
Okay.
enjoyed
And
this
I also
this
just-
podcast.
yeah, David, what are your last thoughts before we go?
My turn?
Yes.
Yes.
Eat good food. Cook a chicken. That's it.
Good chicken.
That's it. Hey, David, where can our audience find you? Socials, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
Food Americana on Facebook, Food Americana on Instagram. And I actually, if people talk to me, I answer. So get in touch.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
All that will be in the show notes. I have loved this show. I agree with everybody. Nobody ever says that. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's so good to be done after the 2." But I feel like we could talk to you for 10 hours. So.
Well, you guys are smart, bright, and great to talk to. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Grandpa's young. That's our show. Hey, Grandpa, I love
Thank
you.
Love you
Good to
too,
be back.
Brandon.
Thank you so
Good
much.
to see you
guys.
after several weeks.
Podcasting with Grandpa Bart and Rosie, always on his shoulder. This is Grandpa and Chill.
Grandpa and Chill is brought to you by your hosts, Brandon Fox, Bart Frank, and Phines Jackson. Our producer is Sierra Doss. You can find episodes old and new on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch the show, and follow us on Twitter for behind-the-scenes moments you can't get anywhere else.